the final story I'll mention, and that is the story of Dr. Fadl. I just mentioned Dr. Fadl right now. Ayman al-Zawahiri was the one who gave da'wah to Dr. Fadl, and this was back in the 60s when they were both in medical school together. Dr. Fadl was a far more intellectual person from a much more prestigious or educated family, and he was converted to these jihadist movements, and he emigrated immediately after the death of Sadat. Ayman al-Zawahiri was captured, he was tried, he was put into jail for a number of years, and then as soon as he was released, he made his way to Afghanistan, and you know the story from there. He is now who he is. As for Dr. Fadl, he managed to get away before that, and he went to Afghanistan immediately. And as you know, in Afghanistan at that time, the jihadist movement of Osama bin Laden, in fact, Osama bin Laden was a minor player at the time. In the Afghan jihad, you had far bigger names, Hikmat Yar and Rabbani and Ghulam Rasul and all of these big guys, Saif, and all of these guys were there fighting against the Soviet invasion. Back then in the 80s, and I remember this as a young kid growing up, and I would read this in the newspaper, the term Mujahideen was a positive term. CBS, ABC would use the term in a positive sense, the Afghan Mujahideen, and they would show these really cool pictures of people fighting the Soviets. So when you're against the Soviets, you're the good guys. In any case, so Dr. Fadl went and joined the movement back then, and he continued to rise in the ranks of the jihad against the Soviet Union. Eventually, Dr. Fadl became, if you like, the intellectual architect of the movement, and he began to write a lot of writings. He wrote a book which in English is called the Encyclopedia of Jihad. It's basically al-Umda fi i'dad al-udda. It is a huge compendium over 1,000 pages long, in which he discusses the importance of jihad, the ahadith of jihad, the ayat of jihad, what the scholars of the past said about jihad. And this book is the standard reference after Al-Faraj's book, which is Al-Faridat al-Ghaiba. Al-Faraj's book is a small booklet. It was really the first, it was the catalyst that started this whole trend. Dr. Fadl came along, and in the 80s he wrote a much more larger book, and it is once again available. It's composed of ayat, hadith statements of the scholars, but of course he means with it something other than what most likely those scholars meant in those days. When the Afghan war died down, he moved to Yemen. And he continued to write his books over there, and he retained his legendary status, online, articles, but he kept a very low profile. 9/11 happened, and even before 9/11, between Ayman al-Zawahiri and Dr. Fadl, a rift began to appear. And they exchanged a number of harsh letters and harsh words. After 9/11, Dr. Fadl broke away completely from the movement that, in all honesty, he had been the intellectual founder of. He had been involved in for the last 30 years. Last year, Dr. Fadl wrote a book entitled Tarsheed al-Jihad, reclaiming jihad, re-guiding jihad, diverting jihad back to where it should be. Tarsheed al-Jihad. You're giving jihad the rushd, or the guidance it should have. And this book sent panic waves amongst the jihadists and the militant movements. Why? Firstly, because of who wrote it. This was a person whose books they grew up reading. This was a person who was their intellectual mastermind. He was their alim. Secondly, because he was speaking from experience. This is not some pacifist. This is not some government-employed scholar. He can't be accused of wanting to live a cushy or cozy life in Egypt or America or someplace. This is the man with the credentials. He's lived the life of a real jihadist. He participated in the Afghan jihad, and then he moved forward. So when he's writing from personal experience. This is a brand new book. It's again very difficult to get a hold of. I managed to find bits and pieces of it here and there. I don't have the full book with me. It's not something that I was able to purchase as of yet. You know, living in America, one of the problems of getting books. Nonetheless, from what I read, this is an amazing book. And I have bits and portions of it translated here. And inshallah, I hope someday somebody translates the entire book. But portions of what he says. Dr. Fadl says that these jihadists of our times, and he calls them jihadiyun, so he uses the term jihadists. These jihadists of our times, they cut and paste from the books of the past. But then he says they have no idea, no clue of the reality that they are living in. I want you to understand, this is a person who has lived the movement. He's a part and parcel of the jihadist trend. He has been in it for 30 years. He has seen the assassination of Sadat. He's been in Afghanistan. He knows Osama bin Laden and Zawahiri personally. And now he is breaking away from the movement. Of what he says, These are people, they can quote you the texts, but they have no idea of reality. They don't understand the current circumstances. He accuses the jihadists of many things. He says that these people don't care about scruples and morals. They want to get money from any way possible. He says even from haram means, they just want to get money. Even if it's through stealing or something, as long as they then can justify it to use for jihad. The ends justify the means. He criticizes them for the spilling of innocent blood, and he says there is no crime in our sharia that is worse after shirk than spilling innocent blood. And he asks them, what will you answer Allah Azza wa Jal for all the blood that you have shed? And then he tells them, let the kuffar shed the blood that they are doing. What else do you expect them to do? We are Muslims whom Allah has given a divine guidance. We should be role models. We shouldn't stoop to their level. He says, and I quote, I'm quoting directly from the translation I made. It's my translation, so if I'm wrong, the responsibility is on me. O believers, don't listen to those with fancy slogans who entice you to enter a conflict you are not qualified to participate in. Remember that. Don't listen to fancy rhetoric and slogans. When people are enticing you to enter a military conflict, you are not qualified. He accuses the jihadist leaders of not only lacking Islamic knowledge, but he says you have no knowledge of warfare. You have no knowledge of politics. You have no knowledge of modern economics. You're a bunch of rebels who think they're going to change the system without knowledge of the Sharia, without knowledge of reality. What do you think you're going to accomplish? And he says the harm that you bring about is more than any good that you think you gain. Exactly my analogy of throwing sticks at a fire that's burning. What do you think is going to happen? The harm that you bring about is more than the good that you think that you gain. What is the point, he says, if you destroy one building of theirs and they bomb 100 of your cities? What is the point in killing one of theirs when they retaliate by killing 1,000 of you? Wallahi, these are the words. I can't say he's an alim, he's not an alim. These are the words of a wise man. These are the words of a wise man. What is the point of all of this senseless violence when the response is going to be more senseless violence directed to ourselves? Brothers and sisters, it never ceases to amaze me how shallow militants are, how hudatha al-asnani sufaha al-ahlam, how overzealous and undereducated. They cannot think 2 steps ahead. It's only 1 step. Kill, kill, kill. Get rid of them. Well, what's going to happen after you kill the person in front of you? What will be the retaliation? What will be step 2? They never think 2 steps ahead. What did Juhayman think when he trapped the Kaaba and he held it hostage? What would happen after that? What did Jama'at al-Takfir think when they assassinated Sadat? What would happen after that? What did Al-Jama'at al-Islamiyya think when they massacred hundreds of civilians in Egypt? Another long story that we don't have time to talk about. What did Hassan Abu Nidal think when he killed a bunch of American servicemen? What would be the retaliation? What would be the next step? You're going to make life even more difficult for your Muslim brothers and sisters. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, especially brothers, in conclusion, brothers and sisters, there's a lot to be angry about in the world today. There's a lot that deserves our condemnation. There's a lot that should make our blood boil. But our religion is not based upon mere knee-jerk emotional responses. Our religion is better than that. Be angry, I tell you. Wallahi, be angry. Be angry every time a bomb is dropped on innocent civilians in the name of the war on terror. Be angry every time our tax dollars are spent to oppress yet another group of innocent Palestinians. Be angry every time more draconian measures are utilized against us in this greatest democracy on earth. Be angry. And if you're not angry, then there's a problem. There's a problem in your Islam, and you know what? There's even a problem in your humanity. Be angry. I'm not telling you not to be angry, but what I am telling you, channel that anger in a productive manner. Channel it in a useful manner. Don't be like the person who's just throwing more sticks at the fire thinking he's doing something. Be the person who uses his rational head. Be the person who uses his iman and taqwa to control that anger. Channel that anger not into acts of rage, not into acts of violence, not into acts of militancy, not into foolish and useless rhetoric that will only bring about undue attention to you and greater suspicion of the Muslim community. Don't be an overzealous kid with foolish dreams.